the most unreal, surreal election we have ever seen.
We have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19.
Lines crossing the Bloomberg terminal right now that Elon Musk has agreed to buy Twitter for $54.20 a share in cash.
The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York has confirmed the arrest of FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried in the Bahamas.
Smart people doing stupid things to incompetence or haste, but this one just, it doesn't make sense. First, the facts. Balenciaga is one of the world's most expensive clothing brands.
Convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein remains behind bars today on
abuse of underage girls. Prosecutors say that she recruited and groomed 4
times. As you and I well remember, the president was impeached, President Trump was impeached. No Republicans voted in the House.
With me now. And so, Philip, what's the latest thing that we're getting on the Russian attacks in Ukraine?
Well, day 2.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Badlands Daily. I'm joined once again by my special co-host for Badlands and for Why We Vote, Ash. Ash, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I like your hair today. It's like nice and lively. Is that an appropriate compliment for a woman's hair?
Sure, lively. We'll go with that. I like it.
All right, guys. So welcome to the show today. We got quite a bit to cover, but before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into our first advertiser, our first sponsor for this show, and one of the originals. Ladies and gentlemen, Field of Greens. Let's get real. All of us learned at a very, very early age that eating our daily fruits and vegetables is critical for a healthy lifestyle. Plant foods like fruits, veggies, herbs can play a major role in achieving optimal well-being. But in today's crazy world, it's not easy to get our daily servings of fruits and vegetables into our fast-paced daily lives. So it's easy to give your health a boost with the superfood powder that I use, and that's Field of Greens. Who doesn't need some quick and easy nutrition added to their day? One scoop contains a serving of both fruits and vegetables, and all you need to do is mix it with water or your favorite beverage. No more excuses and no more salads. Add Field of Greens to your daily routine and see why their powdered greens have earned over 3,000 five-star reviews. Get started with 15% off when you visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code Badlands. Again, that's promo code Badlands at fieldofgreens.com. So, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into our first story of the day. And coming up right out of the chute, we have a little COVID story here. And this is a tweet that I just want to share from Dr. William Makis, who has done incredible research. He's an oncologist, and he's done incredible research and a lot of exposure on COVID-19. I'm still going through the declassified origin documents. I got so much on my plate right now, but I'm trying, I'm like an hour on this, an hour on this, an hour on this. And it's brutal, man. But anyways, Dr. Makis put out a new article. Nurses are still dying suddenly, ongoing consequences of the COVID mRNA vaccine mandates. 15 nurses who have died suddenly from March to May 2023 are examined. Cardiac arrest, stroke, and what he calls turbo cancer. And of course, the link is down there if you guys want to follow him on Twitter. His Twitter is @Makis, Makis, @MakisMD. And at some point, I got to get him on a show. I know I reached out to him earlier. He said he was down, but he was going on a speaking tour for like a month. So I wasn't able to get him on then. But that's one of the things. I don't know if you saw the story, Ash, from a while ago. It was probably about 3 months ago. There was an athlete that was, I think he was 19. He was a college athlete, and he got diagnosed on a Thursday with testicular cancer, and he was dead like the next week.
Wow.
And it's like, it was unheard of how fast it just spread to his entire body. So, just another one of those effects of this.
Well, what's maddening about it is, we talked about the, I think it was yesterday, we talked about the the intelligence report on the origins of COVID that came out, where you have 17 different intelligence agencies that all come to, sort of different conclusions, or at least cast enough doubt on the origins of COVID to be able for the US government to claim plausible deniability. And it's criminal. I think what they did in the beginning with COVID was criminal, but the cover up is always worse than the crime. And what we're seeing with that intelligence report and with the behaviors of our government is cover up.
Yeah. Yesterday I was listening to a Bill Maher podcast with RFK Jr. and RFK had a lot of opportunities to drop some red pills dealing with the vaccine. Obviously, that's something that they talked about a lot. And, Bill Maher was against the vaccine mandates. Like, he was openly, he was more conservative in that regard. And, Robert Kennedy had a lot of opportunities to really, drive home some points, but he missed on those. But if you guys want to check that interview out, when he talked about his uncle, about JFK and his dad, it was absolutely fascinating to hear him talk about the CIA involvement and, the conspiracies around the assassination of both his uncle and his dad. So, but all right,
and his uncle is where we got the term conspiracy theorists, right? Coined by the intelligence community to cast, to publicly shame, demonize anybody who was asking questions about the official narrative. That was a very effective tactic, and is still going on today.
Yeah, one of the craziest parts was when he was talking about his dad that was assassinated, just after that. Well, I think he was assassinated in 67? Kennedy was killed in 63. And I think his dad was killed in either 67 or 69. And I think it was in 60. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 67 because they didn't want him to run for president against LBJ. I think, but the fascinating
June 5th, 1968.
68. Okay. So it was 68. So that was before there would have been an election. No, that would have been before. If there was an election in 68, that would have been before the election. I don't know if the election was in 68. Let's see, doing math off the top of my head, guys. 80, 88, 84, 80, 76, 72, 68 would have been a presidential election. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Johnson versus Nixon.
Yeah, right. But had they primaried yet? I don't know. We're getting into a big.
In June, they were in the middle of it, I would imagine. Right. But if he wasn't a declared candidate in 1960, by June of 1968.
Okay. I know that Robert was saying they didn't want my dad to run for president, and so that's just a little foreshadowing. That family has a horrible history. Yeah. Like, I didn't even realize, like, just beyond, the two we're talking about here. I mean, there were plane crashes before that. And after that, obviously, with JFK Jr., just wild. Like, that family, man.
Ted Kennedy and all of his exploits. Yeah, there's a whole, they don't call it cursed for nothing.
No, like I'm telling you what, I wouldn't go anywhere in a car or any, conveyance with that family.
Sure, I'd love to come on vacation with you. I'm gonna take my own transport.
Yeah, right. CanCon, let's go for a drive, and we'll do an interview while we're driving. I'll be like, yeah, I'll be in the car next to you. Actually, I'll be like 5 cars back on a cell phone. I'm not getting in the car with you. I'm sorry.
Agreed.
But anyways, all right, let's go ahead and jump into this next article here from Vox. I think this might be the first time I've cited Vox. 3 people have acquired malaria in the U.S., the first in 20 years. It says in late May, Sarasota County, Florida, health officials confirmed that they had identified a case of locally transmitted malaria. In mid-June, they confirmed the second. On June 23rd, Texas joined in. Its state health department announced it had confirmed a case of local malaria transmission in Cameron County. This is all highly unusual. The U.S. hasn't had a documented locally acquired malaria case in 20 years. Now, the key word there is locally acquired, because people have traveled abroad, gotten malaria, and brought it back to the United States. But these are all, they're isolated incidents, 2 in Florida, 1 in Texas, and they say that they're local. It says experts say the 3 cases shouldn't warrant panic but about widespread malaria transmission in the U.S., but it does warrant asking some questions. It goes on to say, even if this turns out to be not to be widespread, it's a good reminder there's that. They're prepping you. They're getting you dolled up. Be afraid. There's little organisms everywhere that will kill you. Malaria could make a comeback in the U.S., and we and our public health infrastructure ought to be prepared. And what's the first step in preparation? Universal mail-in ballots.
Oh, I was going to say ivermectin horse paste.
No, definitely universal mail-in ballots. The ivermectin horse paste comes after the fact when they put on the tinfoil hats and all that stuff. And wouldn't ivermectin work against malaria? Like,
yeah, it's an anti-parasitic. Yeah, absolutely,
right. So,
it would work against malaria. It's why they, I'm super glad that I have ivermectin horse paste in my house all the time because it is a miracle drug that they have tried to suppress.
Yep. Let me finish up with the article here. It says the virus that has been identified in both Florida and Texas is P. vivax. It's not the worst of the malaria species. P. falciparum is the most severe. It's 10 times more deadly than Vivax. But of course, they can always mutate, right? They can always, I don't know, they'll make up some crap. The infection causes fevers that come and go, along with a wide range of symptoms that can be mistaken for flu, a stomach bug, or liver disease. I mean, they're drumming up just everything COVID. You might have the flu, but you should get tested for COVID just to be safe. And everything, of course, is COVID. Nobody ever had the flu in the year of 2020. It was all COVID. And then lastly, it says Vivax malaria is also sneakier than some of its counterparts. The parasite can hang out dormant in the liver for years after the initial infection, rearing its head after long after an exposure. So just get prepared. They're drumming us up, getting us ready to go.
Yeah, that last paragraph, you don't have it highlighted, but how the U.S. government got rid of malaria in the 1950s by mass chemical bombing.
Oh, yeah. And DDT, too. Isn't that linked to all sorts of cancer and brain disease?
Yeah, that's how we got rid of it. It was eliminated in the 1950s by spraying DDT in homes and environmental areas to kill the mosquitoes that spread it. Now, let's not also forget that Bill Gates is currently funding, and the establishment has been talking for a while about weaponizing mosquitoes and using mosquitoes to spread vaccines.
Yep. A few years back, I'm saying probably 10 years ago, in Florida, they released a whole bunch of mosquitoes down here and said they were supposed to be Zika resilient because we had the Zika outbreak down here in South Florida at Wynwood at an art festival of all places. Very Art Deco-y kind of area. And that's what they did in response was they released a bunch of mosquitoes that were supposed to be Zika resistant if they breed. And it's like you put out all these, biological morphed whatever biological little critters, and you have no idea what the implications are going to be. That's why we have love bugs down here. Love bugs were made at the University of Florida, and they were supposed to, I think, eat mosquitoes. And
love bugs are the worst. For the non-Floridian audience, I lived in Florida for a decade. My family still lives there. Love bug season is insane, and your car is covered with the carcasses of dead animals. The reason they're called love bugs is because they're mating in the air as you're driving around, and it is and their little bodies stick to your car paint, and it is. Love bugs are the most disgusting thing. I did not know that they were genetically engineered.
Yeah, at the University of Florida. Let me see if I could pull up a picture of what the love bugs. Everything's going to be Herbie the love bug. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's almost like they deceptively make stuff like that to kind of obfuscate being able to research something. Love bugs are brutal. You drive in the summertime down here at night and forget about it. You're not gonna. You have to immediately wash your car. Some people spray Pam on their bumper so that they don't stick because they'll destroy they'll destroy your paint.
They will destroy your paint. Yeah, and they're really hard to get off. I don't miss love that. I miss a lot of things about living in Florida. I don't miss love bugs.
Yeah. Well,
the other thing about this story that I think is interesting is it's a locally acquired malaria, right? And the story in Texas, I think, my response would be, well, did, somebody with malaria come over the border? Did, how did it end up here? But Sarasota, Florida, not a border community, right? There's a sort of a Cuban population, I guess, but that's really more where you are.
Yeah, but that's not foreign though. Like the Cubans that are here, most of them have been established 1 or 2 generations by now.
Yeah. So I was thinking, of people coming in Florida, it would, I would think it would be more likely Cubans coming in. But again, that, you know, the story's weird. I wonder how we ended up with malaria in Sarasota, Florida in 2023 without human intervention.
Whoa, we're on YouTube right now. Holy crap.
Woohoo.
Holy crap. I got to be careful with my pride stuff that's coming up here. Can't show all of this on YouTube. Yeah, so my question is like, where the hell did it just come from in Sarasota, Florida? Like, mosquitoes die in the winter. They die in the winter. They're gone. It's a whole new generation that comes out in the spring and summer. And it is our state bird down here. I know every state jokes about that, but where the hell did it come from? But anyways, we're spending too much time on this. Let's jump into our next story here. This is just more of this cultural communism infiltrating, politics is downstream from culture. Well, this is exactly where cultural Marxism is heading right now. This is from the Epoch Times. Proposed hate speech law in Michigan threatens First Amendment rights, conservatives warn. And of course, Dana Nessel says, no, it doesn't. A bill moving through the Democrat-controlled Michigan state legislature, stolen elections have consequences, would make it easy. Oh, YouTube. Oh, wait, we're allowed to talk about that on YouTube right now.
Yeah, they removed that ban. I think the COVID stuff might get us in trouble, but
no, vaccine misinformation is now permissible. I don't know about the rest of the COVID stuff, but a bill moving through the Democrat-controlled Michigan state legislature would make it easier for prosecutors to bring felonious, quote-unquote, hate crime charges against dissident speech. The proposed legislation, HB 4474, would amend the state's Ethnic Intimidation Act of 1988 in order to consider it a hate crime if a person is accused of, quote, causing severe mental anguish, end quote, to another individual by means of perceived verbal intimidation or harassment. What the hell does that mean? I mean, this is pretty, we're getting a little 1984 here. Control The Giver. That's my go-to is The Giver. We're getting to the point where we're all in The Giver. The amendment defines the word.
Hang on a second before you move on. Just the word perceived there, right? The word perceived is the scariest word in that whole sentence. Perceived verbal intimidation or harassment. Your words hurt my feelings, and now you're guilty of a hate crime.
Yep. It says the amendment defines the words intimidates or harass as, quote, willful course of conduct involving repeated or continuing harassment of another individual that would cause a reasonable individual to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested.
To feel that
feel,
way.
exactly.
Not to be molested, not to be harassed or threatened or intimidated, but to feel that way.
Yep. We are getting into the laws of your feelings. It says, quote, words are malleable, end quote, said attorney David Kalman, of the Great Lakes Justice Center, which is a nonprofit organized to preserving liberty in America. They can be refined by whoever is in power. Yep. End quote. He goes on to say, under the proposed statute, intimidate and harass can mean whatever the victim or the authorities want them to mean. The focus is on how the victim feels rather than on a clearly defined criminal act. This is a ridiculously vague and subjective standard. The bill will lead to the prosecution of conservatives, pastors, and parents attending a school board meeting for simply expressing their opposition to the liberal agenda. Now, it goes on to say the bill does not provide the court with the option of an alternative. The bill does provide the court with the option of an alternative sentence. So if you're accused of this convicted, the text reads in part, quote, an alternative sentence may include an order requiring the offender to complete a period of community service intended to enhance the offender's understanding of the impact of the offense upon the victim and wider community. In other words, re-education camp.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is. It is re-education camps. This is going back to Bill Ayers in the 70s when he said we were going to kill with the Weather Underground. We're going to kill 25 million people because they're not going to conform. When there was a plot in the 70s to take over the government by the Weather Underground, a communist group. And Bill Ayers famously said, that there's some people that aren't going to accept communism. They're going to cling to their capitalistic ways, and we'll have to kill them. We'll bring them out west. We'll put them in re-education camps. And if they don't conform and they don't convert to our religion, which it is a religion, then we will kill them. And he says we estimate we're going to have to kill about 25 million people, and that's exactly what this is setting up right here. Now, the last thing.
Wait, go back to that green block that you had highlighted, because the way that this reads, it could be a description of 1984's Ministry of Love. Right. It sounds like, oh, it's just, so you can understand the impact of the offense that you've done. Right. You need to really understand the broader impact that reverberates from your super mean words. Of course, in 1984, the Ministry of Love was where they tortured people.
Yes. Love. They always have, kind of screwed up meanings. I was going to use a different word, little screwed up meanings to what these words mean. It goes on here to say, quote, "You can literally save lives," said Dana Nessel, who's the AG there, a lesbian. And that's what she told the committee. Anyways, Arbit's bill.
Literally. Use of literally in that sentence. You can literally save lives by putting people in education camps for bad words, mean words.
Great point. Usually I highlight keys like that with a different color because I read a lot of stuff every morning, 3 hours of just reading news. And so thanks for bringing that up. You can literally save lives by mean words. What?
You can literally save lives with re-education camps. That's what she's saying.
I'm telling you right now, folks. So I'm reading a book right now. I talked about this. I'm reading a book, and it's called the Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly. And regardless of what you think about the guy, the book I'm on chapter 4 so far, and it's absolutely fascinating. I've adjusted my scope of the most important things. And Ash, you might take offense to this. I've adjusted my scope of the 3 most important topics facing this country. Election integrity used to be number 1. You know it's number 1 now?
Communism.
No, artificial intelligence. Number 2 is election integrity. Number 3 is communism.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I mean, I would probably put communism number 1, because I think that all of the other issues that we have fall under the communist insurrection that's happening or happened in 2020 and that we're living under. But the threat of AI is legit. And Patrick and I were talking on the brief about how the National Archives has decided to use AI to remove bias from our history. That is 1984 newspeak. That is, we don't like the way this part of history reads, so we're going to change it. We're going to make sure future generations get the revised history rather than the real history. So I agree with you, AI, the rise of AI. And when you see, I should probably do a culture of change on AI, but you see how the corporations and professional services firms are really leaning in to the AI space. And the problem that I have with innovation in the corporate world broadly is that there's never a discussion of ethics. They never focus on what are the ethical ramifications of what we're doing. It's all, this is the next shiny thing. We're going to figure out how to make ourselves distinctive with it, right? We're going to use AI to benefit our company in such ways, but there's never a conversation about the ethics of what these companies are doing. And AI is that same problem that we've had with all innovation and R&D everywhere. It's the same problem, but it's on steroids because we're talking about artificial intelligence.
Have you seen the AI dilemma?
I don't think so.
It's mandatory viewing for every single person in this audience. It is
I will watch it today.
After you watch AI Dilemma, you will understand why it is the number 1 most important issue on my list, and it bumped out election integrity. And guys, anybody that's listened to me for any period of time knows that elections were the most important thing in the world to me. Now it's AI, because it will destroy every facet of our existence. It has the potential to, not it will. I'm not against AI, but we got to reel this bad boy in.
So I haven't seen it, and I will watch it since you commanded me to. But is your concern that AI, the intelligence itself, is going to become a problem, or that the people that control it, the people that are using it to their ends, are the problem?
It can't be controlled. I don't think it's going to be able to be controlled. It's already learning. It's human emotion. It's already learning how to pass itself off with human emotion. There's capabilities that it has. I mean, it can use, and its intelligence is far beyond anything we could comprehend. They can use the router, the signal from your Wi-Fi router. They can use that to determine where you are in your house. It's like a sonar for them. They can use it to determine you're sitting on the couch, you're over there in the kitchen, you're doing this. They took fMRI images of somebody's brain looking at an object and asked the AI to look at the brain and then tell you what the object is, and the AI got it every single time.
Wow.
Like, you have to watch the AI dilemma.
Well,
it is so important. But anyways, let's get back into free speech. It goes on to say Arbit's bill would allow civil action to be brought against defendants, even if they were acquitted of criminal hate charges. If successful in the civil suit, the plaintiff could be entitled to 3 times actual damages. I've never heard of that. I'm not a lawyer, so it could be a normal thing. I've never heard of that. Usually you can sue for what damages were, maybe attorney's fees or something else. Here, it's like a force multiplier 3 times.
So in damages theory, broadly, there is oftentimes a multiplier applied based on damages. That we saw that with, I think, Nicholas Sandman, Kyle Rittenhouse. So you end up, what are your actual damages documented that you can prove? And then there's a punitive multiplier attached. So that's not all that. I don't know anything about this case, but that is not out of the realm of possibility.
Okay, well, that was off cuff, but here's the next thing. It says, or $25,000, whichever is greater. So if somebody, harasses you with that $25,000 fine in civil cases, I mean, they just flooded the Justice Department with every single. This is terrifying, man. In other news, with Dana Nessel, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel arraigns 2 in a signature fraud ring. 1 suspect still at large. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who got booed off the stage at an arts and crafts festival in a Biden plus 10 district, but was later reelected, has brought charges against 3 individuals who have been accused of, quote, conducting a criminal enterprise, end quote, and other charges related to the 2022 GOP primaries in Michigan. So are these signature fraud charges based on, ballots that have, fraud signatures that we've seen left and right, up and down, every single place you look? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is about getting on the ballot. 2 individuals have been arraigned while a 3rd individual remains at large. The charges stem from a total of $700,000 that was paid to defendants from 9 separate campaigns in Michigan. According to charging documents, the defendants allegedly knew that the thousands of signatures they submitted in petitions were fraudulent. Goes on to say, I go on to say, I wrote this article, the absurdity of the issue is that James Craig, was the leading candidate in polling for the Republican Party when he was ruled ineligible. Essentially, the front-running GOP candidate in polls was denied a spot on the primary ballot by the Democrat Secretary of State because he didn't have 15,000 signatures accumulated. The Michigan Supreme Court declined to take up Craig's appeal. And then I just add a little note there that Jeff Lenberg, an expert witness, gave testimony in a hearing. It wasn't under oath or anything, but in a city council hearing out in New Mexico, that he thinks the Supreme Court race in Michigan really needs to be looked at, because the race, they were programmed differently and it ended up flipping the court from conservative to Democrat. It goes on to say, apparently checking signatures on petitions for candidacy, especially as the leading candidate in the opposition party, is serious business. Checking signatures on mail-in ballots, not so much. And by the way, the city of Detroit uses Conic software for their absentee voting, including signature. It aids in signature verification. It doesn't do the signature verification, but it aids in it. I think it pulls up the signatures for you to compare or whatever. But this is a, go ahead, Ash. I'll let you get.
Well, so I was just going to say one thing that the story highlights that's really important. And I wrote a piece about this a couple of weeks ago in Badlands, is the candidate selection process. So this is talking about petitioning onto the ballot. In many states, that's the only way that you can get onto the ballot, is to collect enough signatures. When a candidate is trying to collect signatures to get onto the ballot, they generally overshoot it, right? Because every signature is reviewed, and there are going to be rejections of signatures from a petition standpoint. And we see that in this. The rejections of the signatures were enough to keep this guy off the ballot. In Colorado, you have options. You can go through the caucus and assembly process to get onto the ballot, or you can petition onto the ballot. The caucus and assembly process is the process by which you face the people, right? The voters, the most engaged voters of the GOP who have voting positions within the party. That is, in my opinion, the best way to identify candidates that represent your community, right? You come together as a community and you vet them collectively, and you bring them before the most active members of your party and decide who is who should be on the ballot. Unfortunately, we see a push across the country and in here in Colorado as well to eliminate caucus and assembly, to eliminate that process of facing the people, speaking before the people, and allowing them to choose you or choose somebody else in favor of petitioning. Now, do we think that in Michigan, this guy was the only guy who had fraudulent signatures? No, of course not. Every candidate has signatures that are rejected. What's interesting about this story is Nestle's prioritization to go after this one Republican candidate.
Well, she's not. Let me clarify. They're not going after the candidates. They're going after the people that harvested the signatures. It's 3 individuals, a couple that got married after the investigation was opened. I'm sure that might have something to do with being able to plead the fifth. Not being able to incriminate your spouse. But they go on to say that they feel these candidates were taken advantage of because they're political neophytes. That's their exact word, political neophytes. So in other words, they're saying, because you guys don't know how the swamp works, you guys didn't know how the swamp works, and you guys were taken advantage of because of that. But the wild thing about this story, Ash, is that Craig was polling as the front runner for it should be like grandfathered in, that if you're polling number one in a major U.S. party, you're grandfathered in. You don't have to get the signatures. And they took him off the ballot because he was the former Detroit police chief. So he might have had a really good shot. I don't know, the overall sentiment regarding him in Detroit, but he was the former police chief. He was a black man, and he was a conservative. Now, I don't know too much about Craig's politics, but that sounds like a recipe for disaster for Gretchen Whitmer. And anybody that knows Michigan politics knows that Benson, Nessel, and Whitmer, they go like fingers in a glove, man. They are just yeah. It's just
a really awful sorority.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear. If they were fabricating signatures and knew they were fake and submitted them anyway to get somebody on the ballot, that should be prosecuted. I think I don't agree with anybody manipulating this process. Your point about polling, I have a little bit of a reaction to, because polling is easy to manipulate, right?
Absolutely.
And so if we put the standard that if you're polling, as the highest, you're grandfathered in onto the ballot, well, that's a pretty easy thing to manipulate. So I'm not sure I agree there, but I do, the folks in Michigan, we're finally going to go after some, election fraud related type of thing. And it's one Republican candidate who was highly polled and represents a significant threat to their power base.
Yeah.
Not a coincidence.
They ended up in total, I think they removed 5 gubernatorial candidates and 4 others that were in other races. But Craig was the biggest one. And what's the other one? What's his name? Perry Johnson. I think he threw his hat into the ring for president here. He was another one. He wasn't polling quite as high as Craig, but it's just wild that this is where the Democrats in Michigan finally decided to put their staff in the ground and say, this is where it ends, and we're going to go after this. We're going to prosecute this. And they've ignored every single other thing. We haven't seen as much of an investigation into the truck that brought ballots in at 4 a.m. 64 boxes of ballots dumped in the back of the building and stuffed under tables until the next shift came in. And then all of a sudden, now we pull out these ballots so that the people there aren't like, yo, these weren't here an hour ago, because they just got there. So they had no idea. So now they're like, hey, we got 64 more boxes and then we're done. How many, tens of thousands of ballots were in those 64 boxes that were dropped off with no chain of custody?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan is it's a very interesting case when we talk about election fraud, right? You had the one of the swing states that stopped counting on election night,
Yep.
where we had the windows covered with poster boards so that people couldn't observe the counting going on. It was the first report that we got out of ASOG was Antrim County, which proved fraud, and they said, oh, it was human error or whatever excuse that they came up with. And now we see, they're going to get tough on election fraud. It's more cover up.
Don't forget canvas boards that didn't match, and the Republicans voted not to certify it. And then they got they got reassurances from the Secretary of State that there would be an investigation into it. So they changed their vote and they never got the investigation into it.
Yeah, and it's also where we saw the Michigan Governor Whitmer kidnapping plot, right? The FBI fabrication of that. It's where we saw some of the most ridiculous COVID policies. Banning seeds. Remember Whitmer banning people from buying seeds during COVID? How dare you grow your own food? That's not. We need you dependent. You can't do that. And so it's kind of, I think, one of the centers of communist tyranny that we need to break apart.
Well, speaking of centers of communist tyranny, we got just a quick statement. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says voting machines in state are fine despite independent investigation reporting material vulnerabilities. And this has kind of been reported, but I just wanted to read this statement from a few days ago. I think it was last week. After seeing the report, Raffensperger claims that the report wasn't bad and that the machines will be used again in the upcoming elections in 2024. Now, Ash and I had Clay Parikh and Sean Smith on Why We Vote last week. And then literally we just barely scratched the surface of the report. So she came on my podcast over at rumble.com/CanCon, shameless plug, with Clay. And we talked about more of the report, and we only made it through halfway.
I was going to say, we still didn't get through it. We need a part 3.
Right. We need a part 3 going through the report. And then we need a part 4 where we bring in, maybe Kevin and David, who have done tremendous work in Georgia. We bring them on to talk about the evidence that they've accumulated and acquired, and more importantly, the evidence that they've been denied, and talk about this. But Raffensperger's statement says Georgia's election system is secure. It's been battle tested through 2 general elections. I can't say that with a straight face.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Subjected to repeated audits. We went to the Supreme Court just to look at the physical paper ballots, and we still haven't seen them. Allegedly, they've still been, preserved, but who believes that? An intense public scrutiny and come through with flying colors. Yeah, the pride flag. Georgia's election officials are proceeding judiciously and responsibly to ensure that our elections are secure, accurate, and accessible to the voters. Every single piece of voting equipment across Georgia will undergo security health checks ahead of the 2024 presidential election, including verification. No software has been tampered with. We want the software. We want the software to be updated. We don't care about the software that's on there now. That has been proven to be wildly vulnerable. I mean, and Clay was saying J. Alex Halderman just did, like bare bones assessments and investigations, only looking at one machine in an entire complex process. He didn't look at the EMS. He didn't look at the ICPs. He didn't look at the ICEs. He didn't look at any of the printers. This was like scratching the surface, and he completely and totally exposed a main artery.
Well, and so every single piece of voting equipment across Georgia will undergo, we'll pull that back up. I was reading.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Will undergo security health checks ahead of the 2024 presidential elections, including verification no software has been tampered with. This affirms their decision to not patch the software, right? To not apply security patches, to not address the vulnerabilities. No software has been tampered with also means it hasn't been patched. And they've already said they don't plan on addressing the vulnerabilities identified in the Halderman report before the 2024 election. We've now broadcasted the vulnerabilities in Georgia's elections.
Yep. We've broadcasted them. We've told them they're still exposed. Anybody that knows anything about, computer science and cybersecurity probably could figure out what Halderman did to do what he did. I think Clay has said as much. But this is going back. This is par for the course for Georgia. Back in 2007, they took on the Diebold DRE machines. J. Alex Halderman said they're wildly vulnerable. Published a report. California decertified them. Georgia kept using them for 12 more years without even doing an update to the vulnerabilities that Halderman pointed out. So they just have a willful disregard for security in these machines, and they gaslight you and tell you everything's fine. Oh, we're going to do health checks. No, you son of a bitch. You're the guy that we think is doing this. Like, you're the one benefiting from this. We don't want you doing health checks. That's like, that's just absolutely insane to think that he's gonna shore up our trust in the elections by telling us that I'm personally going to do the health checks. No, if you look at Garland Favorito's counting in Cobb County in the I think it was the Vining cityhood, or whatever it's called. We don't think Raffensperger won. I don't think he won, dude. But it is what it is, right? Just.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Fauci investigating the origins of COVID.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison analogy right there. Folks, this is an article. We're not going to cover this in depth, but I just want to put this out there. I'm going to put the link in the chat. I'm going to put the link in the chat because this is something we need citizen activism on. Election integrity for Wisconsin Secretary of State meeting to appoint the Wisconsin Election Commission administrator. Tell lawmakers to block Megan Wolf's reappointment. It says an emergency Zoom meeting agenda for Tuesday, June 27th from 3:30 to 5:30 was recently posted within the last 72 hours by the Wisconsin Election Commission that will address the administrator and or interim administrator position. The agenda and meeting attendance availability are copied and posted at the end of the story for anyone who wants to watch the meeting in real time on June 27th. Guests are not allowed to speak and will not be recognized. However, we're suggesting you leave a voicemail, send a fax, or send an email. And then if you want to check out this article, here are the reasons why Megan Wolf should not be reelected. So I'm going to put that in the chat, folks. If you want to be an active audience, there you go. It's right there in the chat. It's up on the Gateway Pundit. You can look up Megan Wolf, who is also on the board of ERIC, I believe, or was.
Yeah, and I would say, if you're in Wisconsin, leaving a voicemail is great. Send your written commentary in as well, and guests will not be allowed to speak. Are there any restrictions on signage? Because show up and bring a sign.
That's a good point. I mean, this is I don't know. I don't know what the
make
law
them
are.
Hear your voice. Is my point.
So Wisconsin is one of 7 states that has a selected. Well, I mean, everybody's selected in this country right now, but they're one of 7 states that actually has like an appointed election official, whereas the other 43 it's elected. But this is Robin Voss. Who somebody just General Flynn. No, Ivan Raiklen just called out Robin Voss at the last event I was at. Robin Voss is the longest sitting state speaker in the country. He's been there. I don't know. I think he's going on 20 years. He's been there for 4 or 5 terms now. It's ridiculous. But he's the one essentially that has the authority to appoint this person and the influence to get this person across the finish line. And I don't even think he won his primary against.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and Robin Voss, for the audience, you'll remember, Robin Voss sat in a meeting with Colonel Sean Smith and other experts. I'm not sure if Clay was there. Clay, let us know in the chat if you were there. And he came out of that meeting and he was asked, do you believe that there was election fraud? Yes. Do you believe that there was widespread election fraud? Yes. I believe that there was widespread election fraud. What are we going to do about that? We've got to vote in a new Secretary of State. What?
Yeah. Well, he famously said, I mean, after Justice Gableman, after his report said that he would think very hard about decertifying the 2020 election, and Robin Voss immediately was like, "Yep, there's widespread fraud, but there's no vehicle for us to decertify." And I mean, you just had a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice tell you that I would consider decertifying the election. I mean, I would think that he would have a little more insight and he wouldn't say something like that without ensuring that it could actually be done. I mean, it's kind of lawyers and judges are extremely deliberate in the words. I mean, they're artists and their words are their paint. And so when they paint a picture like that of decertifying the election, I'm pretty sure that he knows what he's talking about. So anyways, let's jump into this next story here. Speaking of elections, Ukraine to hold elections after the war ends, says Zelensky. Elections in Ukraine will be held in 2024 only if martial law is ended by then. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with the BBC on June 22nd, Zelensky emphasized that according to the Ukrainian constitution, no elections could be held in the country while martial law remains in effect.
So hang on a second before you read the next part. So this is really interesting because I read a different story about the same topic, right? I didn't read Yahoo. I read something else. I forget what, but the title was Zelensky to delay elections until after the war ends. So, that's just a a moment to look at headline news and recognize how the way Yahoo phrases that, it sounds like, oh yeah, we're going to hold elections just as soon as we can. Well, they're supposed to have elections next year. And Zelensky is saying he's going to delay this year. Yeah, thank you. That he's going to delay the elections until after the war ends. It's, all in the framing of the headline.
Yeah, well, the headline is from New Voice of Ukraine. The Yahoo News is just the aggregator. But it says the next parliamentary elections in the country would be normally held in October of 2023, while presidential ones would take place in the spring of 2024. Earlier, Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, Ruslan Stefanchuk, also said that the issue of parliamentary elections was not on the agenda since, according to the law, they could not be held during martial law. Now, wouldn't that make sense for, once again, the benefactor of not holding the elections, the guy who's like, hey, I get to stay here for overtime. It's free hockey. It's what we always say when you go into overtime, free hockey. But so the other takeaway that I got from that, Ash, is it sounds like Ukraine uses my theory on elections, my not my theory, but my what I've proposed we do with elections, and separate federal elections from local elections and state elections so that you can make it easier. It sounds like they have a presidential election all by itself, and parliament is elected on a different time. Now, I want our Congress and president to be elected at the same time because it's only 3 votes. It's only three votes.
Those are federal elections, right? So if you're separating federal, state, and local, which I agree with you, I think is the way to go. It accomplishes simplifying the ballots. Right now, one of the reasons that we need the machines is because there's so many races. Ballots are so complicated. We have to be able to count, all the different ballot styles. We need the machines for the complexity. The complexity is largely driven by the centralization. Right. We have in Patrick Byrne's piece, he was saying, there's roughly 3,000 counties. I think it's 3,280, but there's roughly 3,000 counties. So we're essentially holding 3,000 elections on election day. And that's true. We are, holding, but we don't have to count them all in one centralized place. Centralizing the count of elections and the complexity of the ballots by putting all of these elections on the same ballot creates the manufactured need for us to have this level of complexity. We're driving ballots all over the state. We have, drawer 3, the machine's bugged out. Drawer 3, we need to bring it to the centralized count place and use the really super special scanners to be able to count the votes. There is so much ability to inject fraud in the system because of the centralization and the complexity. Decentralizing, I think, is the number one priority. Holding elections separately for, like you said, it's 3 races in a jurisdiction. You're looking at your senator that's being elected that year. I think, in Georgia, we saw where there was 2 senators on the ballot at the same time. So maybe you'd have 4, right? In a very special circumstance.
Election. That was
usually you don't. You have 1 senator being elected at a time. You have your representative and you have the president of the United States. That's a simple ballot. You have your county commissioners, your county clerk and recorder, the dog walker and whatever, sheriff, whatever else, that's, 5 to 7 races. Very simple ballot, easy to vote, easy to count. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to put everything on one ballot. We're going to centralize the count at the county level, which means we need transport judges. We need all of these different types of watchers at each part in the process. And there is plausible deniability weaved throughout the system so that we never can have confidence in what the results are.
And there's another facet that you're forgetting about here. You get much more educated voters on your state and local elections. You don't get people that come in because they want to vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden or Joe Biden over Donald Trump. You get people that are going to come in and for state and local elections, and they're actually going to know who their state representatives are. It's wild, Ash, if you go out and talk to people. Not only do they not know who their state rep is, when you ask them, who's your state rep, they'll say, oh, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and be like, no, that's your congressional rep at the federal level. Who's your state representative? Yeah. And they don't even know what a state representative is. And they're voting. These people are voting. And they go down the ballot and they're like, oh, they have a D next to their name. I'm a D. I'm going to vote for them. And you have no idea what this person represents. And the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has gotten so effing communist that that's like you have moderate, Democrats still. I think most of your Democrats now, especially over the certain age, are very moderate, but they vote for Democrats, and this communist infiltration is taking, I don't know. It's something we definitely need to address. But
Yeah, well, before you move on, I would just say it's not just Democrats, right? There are plenty of Republican voters who come in and will just vote R all the way down.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and there are there are communists on both sides of the aisle, and so the uniparty situation that we have favors the uneducated voter. They want the uneducated voter. Our entire system prioritizes access above everything else. It is expand the ability to vote, the right to vote, the access to the polls to everybody possible, because that's what vote that according to the communists who are running the system, that is the importance of voting, is that access is the most important thing. Access is not the most important thing. The fidelity of the results is the most important thing, because we need to understand, we need to make sure we have a duty, all of us, and especially the people who have oversight of election, but every single one of us has a duty to ensure that that our elections reflect the will of the people. Otherwise, we don't have a republic. And right now we don't have a republic.
Yep. Real quick before we move on to the next segment, Texan by birth 11, thanks for the Rumble rant, says, "This is Grateful One on Twitter. Love this show. Thank you for the information." You are welcome. Thank you for the Rumble rant. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this story here. German politicians move to ban and eliminate the AfD Populist Party, the largest opposition party in Germany, saying it's a quote unquote threat to democracy. Where have we heard this before? German leftists moved this month to ban and eliminate their main rival, the Alternative for Germany political party. The AfD is currently the largest threat to the socialists in Germany and continues to gather support from the German people who are exhausted from the failed and punished policies of the ruling elite. It goes on to say AfD party member Pete Bystrom discussed the similarity between the failing German socialists and U.S. Democrats today. Actually, and he says, quote, "Actually, what we see is that we become so strong. The AfD is the second strongest party in the country. The mainstream media, because we have a very strong public television." He blames them. Jim Hoft, this is an interview with the Gateway Pundit. Jim Hoft asked him, like in America, it sounds like Germany and the media is 100% with these people who are doing this. Is that correct? And he says, the mainstream media, yes, because we have very strong public television, just that you can imagine how strong the public television is. The budget of the public television is €9 billion a year. And second, we have just a handful, maybe 5 or 6 big corporations owning all the media. Sounds familiar. And well, they are very pro-government, and even a big part of the print media is co-owned by the socialist parties. Very one-sided situation. Thank God the USA and Germany are two countries with a very strong free media, and this is what's keeping us alive, the free media in Germany. Ash, look at the comparison between the article we just read about Ukraine and now what we're reading about Germany. Do you ever get a feeling like, maybe some 3-letter agency in the United States that starts with C, ends with A, and has an I in the middle? They do this in other countries first to see what the public reaction is, how it's kind of like wargaming, strategizing what they're going to do.
Pilots. They're conducting pilots. Yeah. No, I think you're right on that. I will say, it's not just the CIA. There are 17 intelligence agencies. And, I would argue that probably all of them have a bit of nefariousness going on. But I think that one of the important things to realize is that, they're describing German media, right? There's a handful of companies that own all of the media in Germany. That's day one of journalism school. Journalism 101. The first thing I remember learning was all media is owned by a handful of companies and they're beholden to their advertisers. And so, when you, shareholders is probably more appropriate. And their shareholders, it's BlackRock. So it's not just that in America, we have a handful of companies running the media, and in Germany, they have a handful of companies running the media. It's very likely the same companies.
Yep. All right. So yeah, it's like everything they talk, like so many people are saying, will there even be an election in 2024? In the AI dilemma, they think 2024 will be the last election. Not literally the last election, but essentially you'll understand when you see it. But a lot of people are saying, if we go to war, if there's China-Taiwan conflict, Ukraine-Russia, if that escalates, whatever it may be, they might find a way to subvert the 2024 election and just, declare martial law or something. Who knows? This guy in office right now is getting very desperate. There was a rumor out there. I don't know if was it you that sent it to me from John Basham about which Whitmer Newsom.
No,
So
that was not me.
John Basham, who is a data scientist and a meteorologist. Okay, so take this with a grain of salt, but he's very political. He's been on Hannity. He's been on American Greatness. He's been on a few other podcasts. He came out yesterday on Twitter and said that one of his sources in D.C., a very high-ranking Democrat, said that Joe Biden has 30 more days, and if this whole Hunter Biden thing hasn't blown over, or if it's escalating even quicker, that the Democrats are going to roll out, and wait for it, a Whitmer Newsom ticket.
I mean, they're so deeply unpopular in their states, let alone out of their states. Everybody sees Gretchen Whitmer as a tyrant, right? Like the worst sort of female leader that gets into power and just goes hysterical, tyrannical, right? That's Gretchen Whitmer. Gavin Newsom has already faced recall. He's destroyed the state of California, and that recall was manipulated. We know from the data it was manipulated in the same way that regular elections, primaries, candidate selection processes, the entire system is rigged, guys. It is set up to drive selections that have the appearance of popular support, that have the appearance of being elected, but that's crumbling and falling apart. Since 2020, we have seen in the candidate selection processes, in the primaries and in the general elections, both the off-year municipal ones and the 2022 midterm elections, that this is not representative. Our election outcomes, our election systems are not representative of the will of the people. That is a crisis. There is nothing more important. We could talk about AI. To me, there is nothing more important than ensuring that our American government reflects the will of the people, that we have actual true representatives that are representing their constituents in this experiment of self-governance. We don't have that anymore. The Bill of Rights is largely, ignored. I had a state rep say to me in 2022, Ash, you'd be real surprised how little weight the Constitution carries under this dome. Speaking of the Denver Capitol building, they don't care about our rights. They don't care. They're bringing about their great reset to the New World Order. We're living through it, and we need to wake up and get in the game as soon as possible.
It was really shocking to me about the book I'm reading right now, the Anti-Communist Manifesto. Do you know what the number one book that is assigned in colleges right now? Outside, it's actually number 4. Number 1 through 3 are like papers on writing, written papers. Do you know what the number 1 book is that's assigned to colleges right now, students?
The Communist
Manifesto. Yeah, the Communist Manifesto.
It's either that or Mein Kampf. It was a toss-up, but since you said you were reading the anti-communist,
no, communists hate Nazis, so that wouldn't make sense.
They're all the same. It's all totalitarianism with a different flavor attached to it.
Here's the craziness, and they bring this point up in that book. Is, can you imagine the outrage if they assigned Mein Kampf and Hitler killed 24 million people?
Yeah, I don't know the totals. I know the 6 million Jews number, but I don't know the total number.
It was 24 million people all throughout World War II, but 6 million Jews, right? Mao killed over 45 million, I think.
Yeah, and you go into any college dorm and you'll see his face up on the wall as a hero.
Right.
Yeah.
Just absolutely insane. And people are like, "Oh, you're assigning the Communist Manifesto, no big deal." Do you know where Wealth of Nations is the highest ranking capitalist book? And I think that's like I want to say it was like number 35 or something ridiculous. Don't quote me on that one. Do you know where the Declaration of Independence falls as far as assigned reading?
It doesn't.
165th.
Yeah, so basically it doesn't. Yeah, it should be 1. Our education system, though, our founding documents should be memorized by the time kids get to high school. Right? The principles of liberty should be instilled and embedded in our children. In mine, they are. because we took that on as a parental role. But if we're going to have a public school system, which is not, they're not public, it's a government education system. But why is it that our government education system is teaching communism and fascism and the principles of dependence and collectivism and not teaching the principles of liberty? That in and of itself is a violation of the oath.
Yep. As Stalin said, it's not how you vote, it's he who counts the votes, right?
100%.
Let's jump into this real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
Biden also said that, by the way.
Yeah, he did. So Supreme Court's going to be wrapping up their final session here, and I just want to just go through some of the cases they're going to be facing. These are the bigger cases. They saved all the big ones for the end here. Students for Fair Admission versus University of North Carolina contends that the University of North Carolina violates the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, which bars racial discrimination by government entities by considering race in its admission process when it does not need to do so to achieve a diverse student body. Excuse me. That'll be an interesting decision coming up here, especially because UNC is not a federal institution. They receive federal funding, so I don't know if that's the predicate for this case, that because they receive federal funding, they can't violate the 14th Amendment in how they accept students.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like affirmative action is being advocated, right? That's great. Let's see where we end up. I'm not holding my breath. I was kind of shocked that they, reversed Roe versus Wade. I didn't know anybody had the spine, the backbone to actually do it. So let's see what happens. But affirmative action is inherently racist.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's obvious to anyone with eyes that it's inherently racist, but feelings again, right? Feels good.
Number 2 is Students for Fairness versus Harvard College. So same plaintiffs in this case, alleging that Harvard violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which bars entities that receive federal funding from discrimination based on race. Mallory versus Norfolk Southern. That's just about can you sue a corporation in another state?
Yeah, just before we go on the 2 affirmative action cases, understand the audience. This is for the audience because I know you understand this. Asian students are being openly discriminated against by colleges, right? There are racial quotas that need to be met in not just colleges anymore, but corporations, board composition, leadership roles in different companies. This is the direction of the world, is affirmative action, racial quotas. Make sure that that you have a balanced view of, or you have a balanced representation of things like race and gender and sex. Competence, earning the position. The students that have, over 4.0 grade point averages, but just happen to be Asian, these kids are being discriminated upon, but it's because the system has decided that Asian isn't diverse enough, right? Asians have too much power. They have too much privilege. And so we need to discriminate upon them. That's what these schools are doing. And I'm now more interested in their decisions.
So I kind of think, and this is just a complete total tinfoil hat right here, but a lot of these college institutions, they're taking money from China. They got busted, several years back taking money. I think Yale had like $350 million from foreign donations that they didn't disclose.
Yeah, Harvard too. Harvard's got trouble for China.
Yeah, Harvard has like a $93 million endowment from China. And I'm wondering, and there's a ton of these spies. I mean, Mike Pompeo called it out and said there's 2 million Chinese spies around the world, and we have over 50,000 in the United States. And I can't help but think that a lot of these, so these colleges are promoting pro-China ideologies, and not necessarily pro-China, but they're not talking about, like, you can't mention Uyghur Muslims in any of these colleges. They'll like kick you out, if you talk about what they're doing to the Uyghurs in China. And so I'm kind of wondering if, the discrimination against Asians is to make sure that they only get the Asians in there that they want. Because it's like the Cubans down here in Miami. You go down there, go down to Miami and talk about communism, and they're up in arms. You'll piss them off so fast. So if maybe these Asian Americans that are actually really good American citizens that want to contribute to America and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they're being discriminated against because they're going to go in college and be like, are you people out of your effing mind? My family came from China. That is the worst. It's terrible over there, and they don't want that. So they have to kind of limit that's somebody like you. If you're a Chinese student, very intelligent, get into Harvard, and you're speaking out against that, that's the worst thing that they could ever want there. So I don't know.
Well, and I think where you touched on the part about, receiving federal funding, one thing that we don't see in these lawsuits, which I think is a pretty important criteria, is that foreign students take the place of American students. Right now, should we not have any foreign students? I'm not saying that, but we should not prioritize foreign students, and American students should take preference. This has nothing to do with race or gender or demographics or geography, other than being an American. These institutions are being funded by U.S. taxpayers. We should prioritize U.S. students in their admissions process.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that last month where we're firing American citizens from big tech companies and bringing in, I think they're HB1 visas, and we're bringing in foreigners to take those places, and they do it a little bit cheaper.
They do it a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
they do it a lot cheaper.
I was being sarcastic. And they bring in these foreigners under these HB1 visas, and they're literally taking Americans out and putting foreigners in. So
yeah, and it's a bit of a smokescreen too. I won't go too deep on this, but I did when I was in corporate America, I did do quite a lot of work on global delivery models and third-party labor strategies. And the H1B, yeah.
Whatever
it is. The visas are, bringing foreign workers here. It's repatriating jobs that we had previously moved. In a lot of cases, it's repatriating jobs that we had previously moved into third-party delivery centers overseas, where they do it a whole lot cheaper, right? So you're talking about like, I'm going to make these numbers up, but it's a appropriate story. Say you can do it in the US with an American born worker for $150 an hour. You can do it in the US within a foreign worker on a work visa for, $50 an hour. You can do it in India for $17 an hour. Right. Like that's the level of these decisions that they're making. So the third party labor debate has always been about competitiveness. We can't compete because everywhere else can do it. This is also moving manufacturing, right? We can't compete because it costs too much to do it in America. Yeah, but the people that are telling you that are also enabling that cost disparity. So it's a very complicated issue.
All right, we got to run through these. We're sucking out a lot of time here. 303 Creative versus Ellenus. In this case, the justices are grappling with the tension between legal protections for LGBTQ people and the rights of business owners who are opposed to same-sex marriage. A devout Christian who believes that marriages is limited to unions between heterosexual couples only. Lori Smith, a Colorado website designer, is a devout Christian who believes that marriage is limited to unions between heterosexual couples only. She wants to expand her business to include wedding websites, but does not want to create wedding websites for same-sex couples. She seeks a declaration that Colorado cannot enforce its anti-discrimination laws against her. That case is really interesting. We could talk for 2 hours about that case.
It's the cake case all over again. Exactly. And the communists in Colorado will not give up. They're still attacking the baker, and now they're attacking the website creator. It's ridiculous.
Yep. I agree 100%. I agree with, all right, we can't get in that. Moore v. Harper, this is a major one. Major election case. A group of Republican legislators from North Carolina argue that the quote unquote independent state legislator theory, the idea that Constitution's elections clause gives state legislatures nearly unfettered authority to regulate federal elections without interference from the state courts, barred the North Carolina Supreme Court from setting aside a congressional map adopted by the state legislatures. Now, the congressional map thing is a big deal there, but the overall thing here is going back to, Article 1, Section 8? Is it Article 1, Section 8, where it says Congress determines, state legislatures determine the time, place, and manner. But it does have this one stipulation at the end where it says, I think it says something along the lines of Congress can from time to time make laws. I'll look it up. If you want to read this one, Ash, can you see that enough to read it?
The Biden versus Nebraska one?
Yeah, read that one real quick while I look this up.
Okay, Biden versus Nebraska argued February 28th, 2023. One of two challenges to the Biden administration's student debt relief plan. This case was filed by 6 states with Republican attorneys general. The debt relief plan relied on the HEROES Act, a law passed after the September 11th attacks that gives the Secretary of Education the power to respond to a national emergency by waiving or modifying any statutory or regulatory provision governing the student loan programs so that borrowers are not placed in a worse position financially as a result of the emergency.
Okay, hold on. I almost got it.
All right, so we're talking about the HEROES Act on this one, and that is, of course, the student debt relief plan that has been held up in the courts since it was announced by Biden. People very excited to sign up. That we had the website launch. Everybody got really excited, and then it's been on hold. There's been lots of statements issued by the White House over the past year or so saying, go ahead and sign up. We're fighting through the courts. It's going to happen. Lots of false hope given to students that they're going to get their debt wiped out. Doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, this is more of the federal government, the regime that we have in place right now, just trying to continue to cycle people through these colleges because that's where the indoctrination is. Folks, go to a trade school, man. You're going to make way more money than your average college student coming out of there. Maybe at night, if you want to start your own business, maybe at night take some business classes at your local, community college or something along those lines, but get a trade school, become a plumber, become a truck driver, a welder. Welders, man, great money in welding. Go to trade school, man. Screw this crap. These colleges, these underwater basket weaving and gender studies. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Did you find time, place, and manner?
Yes. It's Article 1, Section 3. I should have known that. The time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But Congress at any time by law but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators. So there's that right there. Reading on Department of Education versus Brown, the second challenge to the debt relief program comes from two individuals, student loan borrowers. One is not eligible for any relief under the Biden plan because she does not have any federal student loans, while the other cannot obtain the full $20,000 in relief available to some borrowers under the Biden plan. Might be 14th Amendment. I don't know. But see, if that opens it up like to 14th Amendment, here's what I'm waiting for. Somebody that says, well, I didn't go to college, so I want $20,000.
Yeah.
Like I want my $30,000, and see, that's where we got to stop this. You got to put a lid on this real quick. And in the words of Matt Gaetz, get the federal government out of education, period, in total.
Well, yeah. And I mean, to me, this isn't really even about education. This is about loans, right? This is where we're now. Yeah, sure, for education, but we're deciding that, the Biden administration has decided that an entire generation of college students should not be responsible to pay the loans that they signed up for.
Right.
Is this going to create a precedent in other industries? Right. Why are we coddling? Right. I mean, I'm with you. I don't believe that you should go into, $20, $60, $100,000 in debt to be brainwashed by communist professors. I think that's generally a bad life decision. And I've counseled my children against it. Now, my oldest is going to college. He got accepted. He decided he wants to go. He wants to study finance, and he's going to go to college. And he's, probably going to take out some loans in order to do it. And that's on him. But my job in that as a parent is making sure he understands the responsibility he's signing up for. Right. And not saying, hey, just go out and take this loan because eventually Biden's going to wipe out your debt and then you're going to get a free college education or a significantly discounted college education. This whole arena of student debt loan forgiveness is, in my opinion, an area that's a line we do not want to cross because it sends the wrong message. It sends a terrible precedent. And it's, again, burdensome on taxpayers, many of whom chose not to go to college, many of whom went to trade school, started their own business, did things the right way, managed their debt appropriately, all of those kinds of things. We're going to put the burden upon responsible people to accommodate and coddle the irresponsible people.
Yeah, I mean, when the federal government is starting to hand out essentially free money to the colleges, guaranteed money, saying, "Hey, if this person goes to your school, you're going to get paid no matter what. Whether or not that person pays us back, don't worry about that. That's not your responsibility." That drives up the prices because now you have you have somebody guaranteed to foot the bill for all this, who prints the money. They print the money. So they have an endless bankroll to fund this, and from there the colleges are like, oh well, instead of an average 4-year degree being $12,000, we're going to bump that up to $60,000, or and I mean Harvard is sitting on billions in endowments, Yale is sitting on billions in endowments, and look, our university system, especially when you get to the top tier universities, are like casinos. They are licenses to print money. And in turn, what they do for the government in return is they indoctrinate children whatever way they want, which, since the 60s and 70s has been communism. Anyways, let's get into
well, just one more point on this. We've talked about 4 cases now that deal with higher education, right? You've got the affirmative action ones, and you've got the how do you pay for it ones, right? And the decisions of these cases could be pretty impactful to the landscape of higher education in America. Again, it's, do we have a Supreme Court that has enough of a backbone to take on some of these issues, which, anytime you're offering people free money, it's pretty popular. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Doesn't mean it's good for the population at whole. Doesn't mean it's good for those of us who pay taxes, who are going to end up having to pay for this. But free money is very popular.
All right, we got to get back into these. We're at an hour and 20 minutes, and we're only about a third of the way through the show. Now we have Groff versus DeJoy, in this case of an evangelical Christian who declined to work as a postal carrier on Sundays. The justices are considering how far employers must go to accommodate the religious practices of their employees. Under federal law, employers cannot discriminate against workers for practicing their religion unless the employer can show that the worker's religious practice cannot, quote unquote, reasonably be accommodated without, quote, undue hardship. Now, I'm all for this one because this would only apply to the federal government, and I would love to see the federal government shut down for 52 days a year, every single Sunday. Closed, can't do business. Bingo, let's do it. Shut him down. And to be honest with you, I don't think he's going to win in that case because you can make plenty of arguments for how you could practice your religion. Orthodox Jews might win for Saturdays because, that's like explicitly. Now, we say the Sabbath in the Bible, but isn't there discrepancy about the Sabbath being on Saturday versus Sunday? And there's... Yeah.
There is technically the Sabbath is sundown Friday to sundown on Saturday.
Right.
And the Christian church has set their holy day as Sunday as opposed to Saturday. However, Jesus did say Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. You're not supposed to be slaves and legalistic to the law, but you are. It's the reason that there is a Sabbath is because it is for your good to take a rest from work and to spend time focused on your relationship with God once a week. That's why God gave us the Sabbath, is because it's for our good. The legalism about which day it falls on is, that's a distraction in my opinion.
I'm surprised the Babylon Bee hasn't written an article yet. After Chick-fil-A hired the DEI VP, I'm surprised they haven't written an article yet that Chick-fil-A reverses policy on the Sundays off. that would go nuts. That'd be a pretty good article. All right, Counterman versus Colorado. Quote unquote, true threats are not protected by the First Amendment. This is an important one. The question before the justices is how courts should determine what constitutes a true threat. Counterman contends that to determine whether speech is a true threat, courts must consider the speaker's intent. The state, by contrast, argues that the court should only apply an objective test that looks at whether a reasonable person would regard the statement as a threat of violence. So this is going back to yelling fire in a crowded theater, which has been ruled that it's not. Everybody always says you can. Free speech is not unlimited. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Actually, you can.
If there's a fire, you can. Otherwise, it's incitement.
No, absolutely not. In the 80s, it was ruled. It was overturned in the 80s that it is free speech to be able to scream that in a theater.
Sure, but if you yell fire in my point is not the speech violation. It's if you yell fire in a crowded theater and there is not a fire and it leads to damages, people getting trampled, all that kind of stuff, you can be prosecuted for incitement. But it's not about the speech.
No, you can't.
if there's actual injuries involved,
Yeah,
we'd
we'll
have
have
to
to
litigate that.
We'll have to research this one a little bit more, but you might be able to be sued civilly, but you can't be prosecuted for it. There's no crime. There's no crime. You could probably sue civilly, I'm sure. But all right, so let's get in. This is the big story. We've been really dragging ass. And actually, you know what? Before we jump into that, we do have to go through some of our sponsors here because that's really important. I knew that Supreme Court story. I probably should have saved that like for the very end. But ladies and gentlemen, did you always want to own your night vision binoculars, but you didn't get them because of how pricey they were? And the answer to that is always yes. Well, now you can grab them for under $200 from our amazing partner, TacRite. Similar night vision usually sells for over $4,000 once they're military grade. However, TacRite was able to make a revolutionary new night vision system. Military night vision requires at least some ambient light to work. TacRite night vision binoculars let you see even in pitch darkness. Right now, Badlanders can get an amazing one-time discount. You can grab one today for under $200. You don't need a coupon code or anything. Just visit TacRiteBadlands.com. This would make a great gift for anyone that is interested in the outdoors, hunting, military, or just wants to be able to feel safe at night. Grab yours today. This is a limited time offer. Get yours at TacRiteBadlands.com. That's TacRiteBadlands.com. And let's go ahead and jump into another sponsor here. And this is Angel Paste. Angel Paste is an all-natural, organic, American-made miracle cream made using only food-grade plant oils. Patrick's sister Barbara makes it in her home in Spring, Texas. It isn't some Chinese goo made to sit on the shelves for years with chemicals that actually gets absorbed into your bloodstream. They hear from folks constantly about how Angel Paste has helped them. Here's another great report from Jamie in Oklahoma. She said, Barbara, I want to thank you, Patrick, and Ashley for an incredible product. I have eczema in my left ear and have been looking for relief. As of today, I don't have any itching or flaking. Thank you so very much for creating a product that actually helps those of us with skin issues. Experience Angel Paste for yourself today. Go to angelpaste.com, promo code Badlands. Again, that's angelpaste.com, promo code Badlands. Angel Paste is an all-natural skin product made by Patriots for Patriots. Your skin will drink it up. And Ash, didn't you find out that it's a good makeup remover?
I did. So I have very sensitive eyes. There's very limited makeup I can use because my eyes end up getting really, really irritated by all sorts of things. I usually use baby oil to remove my makeup, and I thought, hey, I've got Angel Paste now. I already had great success with this. I have this little skin ulcer on my arm that I've had forever. Used all sorts of products. It was a nuisance, right? It wasn't like anything terrible or anything, but Angel Paste took it up one application and the thing was gone. It's been there for years. So I tried it as a makeup remover, and it takes your makeup off seamlessly, but then the skin around your eyes, it's better than any eye cream I've ever used. So Angel Paste is legit. The claims are not hyperbolic. I'm a big, big fan of the product.
Awesome. Real quick, Rumble Rant from New Kid says, I make $42 an hour and $64 overtime per hour as a delivery driver for Big Brown, and I never even thought about going to college. Don't bother, folks. That notion is being heavily considered by a lot of people coming out of high schools and stuff like that, because and parents, you guys need to be concerned with this, because you guys are the ones footing the bills for all these kids to go to college and just buying into the system that you have to go to college in order to do what? Be in debt for 30 years and all this other stuff. But let's jump into this story. This is the big story of the day. CNN obtains the tape of Trump's 2021 conversation about classified documents. I'm sure most of you guys have heard it by now. I'm going to go ahead and play it. And we'll go ahead and play this.
This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case,
Mm-hmm.
Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time.
she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert. By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because we were talking about it, and he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? He said the papers. This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
I don't know, we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify.
figure out
it. See, as president, I could have declassified
Yeah.
it. Now I can't, but this is
Yeah,
classified.
now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so, look, we here and I have, and you probably almost didn't believe me, but now you believe me.
No, I believe
It's
you.
incredible, right?
No,
Hey, bring some Cokes in,
one.
please.
All right. So that's the speech right there. Trump has said there was no, during his interview with Brett Baer, he says there was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else talking about Iran and other things. And it may have been held up or it may not have been, but that was not a document. I didn't have a document per se. There was nothing to declassify. There were newspaper stories, magazine stories, and articles. It goes on to say the audio recording comes from a July 21 interview that Trump gave at Bedminster Resort for people working on the memoir of Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff. The special counsel's indictment alleges that those in attendance, a writer, publisher, and 2 of Trump's staff members, were shown classified information about the planned attack on Iran. Now, a couple questions. First off, are the people in that recording, are they going to testify that they saw the classified documents? Because there's a lot of context missing from this. What led up to that conversation? Because if Trump's said, I had classified documents showing that there was a plan to attack Iran or whatever, that's known information. I mean, the U.S. has contingency plans for just about every nation, especially those that are hostile to the United States. Now, the details of those plans, those are, they would be classified unless he declassifies them. But he goes on to say, I think he said this just came out or something like that. And that is referring to this article right here by the New Yorker, which Trump has alluded what he was talking about, which came out July 15th, 2021, which is right when that meeting was happening. And it says, you're going to have a effing war, Mark Milley's fight to stop Trump from striking Iran. So it sounds like what Trump is saying is New Yorkers saying that was Trump wanted to do it, is what Milley's saying. And Trump's saying, no, it was him. I have the documents. But here's the article. Look, this is what they're saying. It's not true. I have the classified documents that he wanted to do it. Doesn't say that he showed him any documents.
Right. Yeah, there's not. So what I find fascinating about this leaked audio story is how many people are out there. There's the DeSantis simps, there's the Democrats, there's, all of the usual suspects. This is, the walls are closing in, guys. This is, they're really going to get him this time. This is really the thing. But when you listen to it, as we just did, you hear shuffling of papers. You hear some pretty vague discussions about Iran, about classification. What you don't have is any proof that Trump is waving classified documents in the faces of people that don't have security clearance, which is the claims that are making the rounds on the mainstream media. This is, I am constantly amazed by the continued power of headline news. Right. We have headlines, and people believe because they've been conditioned to believe. And, this is going back to the 80s and 90s with CNN's headline news, an actual show where you were taught and conditioned to believe. We as Americans were taught and conditioned to believe that we could get the facts of a story. We could understand the truth from a headline. Then we got social media. Right. And we got 140 characters now, 240 characters on Twitter, further degrading people's pursuit of what the truth is, what the real story is, and ability to think beyond the headline. And this, the way we see this story with the legs of this story of Trump is, we got him now, guys. He's waving classified documents around in a room full of people that don't have security clearance. There's no evidence for that in this story. There's zero evidence of what they're claiming about the story, but they're claiming it anyway.
Yep, absolutely. And there's no context. You got to play that whole recording if that's the case, or at least to where they've because they were already talking about this when the recording starts. And so what was said before that would add context to this conversation. Just real quick to the point you were saying, I talked earlier about the Bill Maher RFK interview, and in that the classified documents thing came up, and it's just wild to me how much even people that claim to be educated, and I mean, Bill Maher should be at least mildly educated on current events. And, he brings up the classified documents and said I think they might, he might be in some trouble in this one. And RFK said, well, if he's in trouble, so is Mike Pence, so is Joe Biden. And Maher goes on to say, well, yeah, Biden had some documents too, but Trump is 10 times worse. And it's like, you have no effing clue.
No evidence.
You have no clue. Like Trump, we're talking about 35 boxes of some classified markings mixed in there when he had the plenary power to declassify. Joe Biden has 1,850 boxes in his garage in Chinatown at the Penn Biden Center with access to Ukrainian and Chinese officials, or at least people that are in cohorts with Chinese and Ukrainian officials. Like, it's not even close. Like, this is
going back to his time as senator.
Right.
Back, this guy he's a kleptomaniac when it comes to government documents, and he's got them everywhere, stored in boxes everywhere, with no authority to have those documents. The key difference, the big difference that we don't talk about, that the national conversation about this issue, is the fact that Trump has the power and authority under the Presidential Records Act to have any documents that he so desires, and to be able to declassify those documents if he wants to. Yep. They don't want to talk about that because it doesn't support the narrative. They want to talk about how he's, somehow worse than the guy who took classified documents illegally as a senator and as vice president.
And to chime in on this is Tom Fitton, the president or the founder of Judicial Watch, which is the organization that sued Bill Clinton to get his sock tapes, which were never formally, whatever formally means, formally declassified, and were kept in his sock drawer, and did have national defense information. There was conversations about, conversations he had with Congress and other foreign leaders about the war in Bosnia and Somalia. And it says here, if Tom Fitton tweeted out, the leaked Trump tape does not tell us anything we don't already know. As president, Trump received records as commander-in-chief. Nothing on this tape suggests he wasn't authorized to have the record. The Constitution, various laws, and court precedent establishes that the president has unfettered authority to manage records as he sees fit. The court, by the way, should find out who leaked that tape. Yep. That would be a great start. I'm sick and tired of these frickin' leaks everywhere we go, and they're only one-sided. It's to drum up the public perception of Trump and the case against Trump, so that it kind of incites violence when they don't get what they were expecting to get, because for so long CNN and MSNBC are like, we got him this time. There's no way that a judge can rule against this. And you're like, you're ignoring precedent for 30 years of precedent. You're completely ignoring it. And you're drumming up your base so that when they don't get the ruling they want, they're going to riot. They're going to be in the streets doing violent crap because you guys told them this time we got him, and you guys have injected them so much with this anti-Trump, Trump derangement syndrome booster shots that their veins are popping at the idea of getting him. And meanwhile, we saw the poll yesterday, Ash, we covered it, the Chuck Todd poll. 74% of America thinks we're in the wrong direction, but they're like lemmings to the sea. You just follow the next one off the cliff and you're like, whatever, as long as it's not Trump, I don't care. We'll continue. Let's get that number up to 89%, 95% that think America is on the wrong track. As long as it's not Trump that's leading us on that wrong track. It's the stupidest effing thing you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I said it yesterday, but I tend to think the number already is much higher than 74% because that was an NBC News poll. I think 74 is the number that they were able to get away with. But yeah, I mean, looking at they're not just ignoring precedent; they're ignoring the law. Right. The law states that the president has these powers. The law was tested in the sock drawer case. It's a long-standing precedent for 30 years because it's already been tested. The law has been the courts have been very, very clear on this, to, sound like KJP for a second. We've been very clear on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now they've tried to silence him. Of course, now he can't talk about anything having to do with the case. But I want to read this real quick. This was a tweet by Julie Kelly. Breaking: this is why they want to get rid of Judge Eileen Cannon in the classified documents case. Her first smackdown on special counsel Jack Smith. Quote, paperless order denying without prejudice government's motion to implement special condition of release. The government seeks an order implementing a special condition of bond related to defendants, Trump and Nada, their communication with 84 listed witnesses about the facts of the case, except through counsel. The government conditions its request on the filing of the non-exhaustive list under seal. Defendants take no position on the government's seal request, but reserve the right to object to the special condition in the manner by which the government intends to implement it. In the meantime, numerous news organizations have moved to intervene to oppose the government's motion to file the witness list under seal, citing the First Amendment and related legal principle. Upon review with the foregoing materials, the government's motion is denied without prejudice, and motion to intervene and accompanying motions to appear pro-hack vice are denied as moot. Do you know? I'm just going off the cusp here, but cuff. Do you know who was denied the pro-hack vice? So that pro-hack vice is when an attorney from another jurisdiction comes in and tries to argue in a jurisdiction that they're not authorized to argue in. So the judge,
I have that order. I'm going to look it up while you're talking.
Yeah, I don't know who they're talking about that's denied from arguing this case, but it's the government's attorneys, I would imagine. It goes on to say the government's motion does not explain why filing the list with the court is necessary, does not offer a particular basis to justify sealing the list from public view, and it does not explain why partial sealing, redaction, or means other than sealing are unavailable or unsatisfactory, and does not specify the duration of any proposed seal. So far, Judge Cannon is basically allowing Trump to, or excuse me, not sealing the witnesses, but still Trump is not allowed to talk about details of the case, which you can't defend yourself. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's that is such a crime in my view, that they're going to gag the people bringing this case. The government they have all the megaphones. They initiate leaks whenever they want to, right? And then those leaks make it around the world before Trump can get out a statement to defend himself or anything. Putting a gag order on Trump with regards to this case is an unbelievably unfair thing to do, because we're talking about his opponents don't follow rules and laws. They don't follow gag orders. They just leak things and get their narrative out there anyway.
Let's jump in. I don't have anything left on the Trump thing. I mean, those tapes, they mean absolutely nothing. Like that was another home run for them. And again, unless do we know if those women and the others involved in that room, if any of them are witnesses?
I don't.
Yeah, so we won't know that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this next article here from Breitbart. Exclusive: support mounts among House Judiciary Republicans for Merrick Garland's impeachment. Apparently, they're taking this pretty seriously. Now, there's a lot of different perspectives or aspects of this impeachment idea. But it says here, support among House Judiciary Committee Republicans for an impeachment inquiry into AG Merrick Garland grows stronger after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy threatened impeachment proceedings if the IRS whistleblower allegations turn out to be true regarding the politicization of the Justice Department's Hunter Biden tax probe. IRS whistleblowers told Congress last week that DOJ twice prevented, I can't read right now, it's because it's so zoomed out, twice prevented United States Attorney David Weiss from bringing stronger charges in two separate locations against Hunter Biden. Garland rejected a request to appoint a special counsel to David Weiss. Now, this is something, we played yesterday. We played the testimony with Chuck Grassley, where he was under oath saying that.
And he lied.
He lied under oath. Well, yeah.
I'm saying he lied. He lied, man. The blocking of David Weiss from bringing charges happened in March of 2022 for the District of DC, and in January of 2023 for the District of California. And Merrick Garland stated in March of 2023 that he would never be obstructed, that he doesn't know anything about him being restricted from bringing charges, and that he has full plenary authority to pursue the case wherever it leads. That is a lie. So the what you need to say, well, he didn't lie under oath, is that he didn't know. That's the only way that Merrick Garland didn't lie under oath, is that he didn't know that David Weiss was prevented from bringing charges in California and DC. And given that Merrick Garland has already said that he gave him full plenary authority, who would have denied him?
Right. Well, that's what I was saying yesterday is, remember, we played that.
Mm-hmm.
And Garland said that if I would have made him special counsel, he would have had to answer to me, which would have made Garland directly, which would have implicated him directly if he did deny any of these charges. So what he did is he pushed it down to the U.S. attorneys in those particular districts to deny it. So I think we got to figure out who the district, the U.S. attorneys, I'm sure they've already done this, who the U.S. attorneys are in that district, and bring them in for questioning as well. You know, they need to come in and testify before Congress as well. Like this is a whole, like this is literal obstruction of justice, not what they drum up Trump for, you know, his impeachments and for the documents and all the other crap that they brought up. This is literal obstruction of justice and lying under oath to Congress. I mean, he's absolutely, if this turns out to be true, which I, you know, more than likely believe it is, given the testimony, the willingness of Shapley to come out and name people by names, that's something you never see. You never see them calling people out by names. Shapley came out and said, these are the names of the people. And they're, you know, pretty high-ranking people in these intelligence agents. Well, not intelligence, but these bureaucratic agencies. And so I tend to believe Shapley in this situation here and Weiss. And if that's the case, man, Garland's done. Put a fork in him. He's
As
done.
he should be. I mean, can you, and also praise God that this guy didn't become a Supreme Court justice.
Oh.
Like, I seriously, Mitch McConnell for the win on that one. I'm not a Mitch McConnell fan. I've been wanting him to be removed from his position since he destroyed the Tea Party and Michelle Bachmann back in 2011, late 2011, early 2012. But he definitely did the American people a solid by preventing Merrick Garland from becoming a Supreme Court justice, which is for life. Like, can't get rid of him at that point.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into this story here. This story is interesting right here. Billionaire JP Morgan board member who previously served on Obama's Intelligence Advisory Board dies in a crash. And that's not even the most shocking membership that this guy has. James Crown, longtime JP Morgan board member, died in a tragic car crash on Sunday in Colorado. Crown, who also served as the chairman of the Aspen Institute, died. And anybody here that knows and follows John closely knows why that's very significant. Died after he got in a car crash when he hit a barrier at the Aspen Motorsports Park in Colorado. Crown's involvement in politics stems from his long-time relationship with former President Barack Obama. In 2014, during his second term, Obama appointed Crown to his Intelligence Advisory Board. And let's jump over here to see James Crown real quick. Chairman of the Aspen Institute, trustee of the Museum of Science and Industry at the University of Chicago, director at JP Morgan Chase, and former member of President's Intelligence Board. Now, the reason I bring up the Aspen Institute, this is just wild how all this comes about. So JP Morgan, heavily embedded in this Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit, you know, that's ongoing right now. Obviously, an intel advisor for Obama, Russiagate and everything else that's coming out right there. And then the one that Gateway kind of missed on this, and I might have to, you know, make some phone. No, I'm just kidding. But the one they missed on this is the Aspen Institute, where the Hunter Biden thing is crazy. You know, obviously it's a huge news topic right now. The Aspen Institute before the 2020 election literally war gamed on how they would deal with the intelligence aspects or the fallout of a Hunter Biden laptop leak. Before it was leaked, they talked about that. So, and the Aspen Institute's got all sorts. I mean, John, maybe tomorrow we'll dive into, you know, just kind of do an overview, since the chairman emeritus of the Aspen Institute Board of Trustees just happened to die in a car crash on a racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question. And you know, I don't know this guy. I know that JP Morgan Chase has been in the news quite a bit lately, from, you know, Epstein to shorting banks and Jamie Dimon basically controlling the regulatory priorities and investigative priorities of the Department of Justice. But I guess my question on this is, do we believe in accidents anymore?
No, not if they involve Obama or Hillary.
Not if they involve board chairman emeritus of the Aspen Institute.
Remember the guy a few months ago, like 6-8 months ago, that shot himself in the chest with a shotgun after hanging himself from a tree?
Yeah, that's quite the accomplishment. And
yeah,
the shotgun was found like 20 yards away.
20 feet away, and they're like, "Oh, it's the recoil from bullshit."
Yeah.
I'll go out right now and I'll hold a shotgun over my shoulder like that, and I'll pull the trigger and let go of it. It's gonna go 3 feet and drop at most.
At most.
And this thing flew so far away that they didn't even see it when they first did the initial crime scene investigation. The cop had to go back and look, and he's like, "Oh, look, there's just a shotgun in the grass right here."
Yeah, no, that's a great point, actually, because when the story first broke, it was like he was shot twice in the chest, but there's no gun.
No, just once.
Right?
Just once. It was a shotgun blast.
He was shot. Yeah, sorry, I was thinking of who was it that was shot in the head, back of the head twice, and it was ruled a suicide.
Yeah,
I was conflating the two, but anyway, it was the original story. They couldn't find, there was no gun. Right. He hung himself and shot himself. It was total suicide, guys. There's nothing, you're just conspiracy theories if you think there's something weird with, hanging yourself and shooting yourself, but there was no gun involved. And then, they found the gun, but it was so far away that, they missed it the first time around.
I'd be really curious if before he went out on the track, because this is at the Aspen Motorsports Park, I'm sure he was driving like a really nice car. He's a millionaire at least. I'm sure he's driving a really nice car, having a great time. Did they have any hors d'oeuvres or drinks before they got out there on the track? And was there, ample surveillance over the drinks to make sure that anything wasn't put in there so that he would pass out when he's on the track doing 150 miles an hour and crash into a barrier in a nice Ferrari or something like that?
I don't know, but this is a great time to remind everybody that if you're ever in a crowd, always watch your drink.
Yes. I'm just throwing out, ideas of what could have happened, because this is bizarre that the guys involved in JP Morgan, Obama Intel, and the Hunter or the Aspen Institute that pre-gamed on how to deal with Hunter's laptop, and the guy turns up dead, as all three are getting a lot of scrutiny right now.
Yeah. And we know that, the Hunter Biden laptop thing was coordinated, orchestrated, throughout. We know that the FBI had it in Patrick Byrne's thing, actually, that he briefly published yesterday and then pulled down. He talks about how he personally handed an image of the full image with all of the, 400,000 really, really horrible images of the Hunter Biden laptop, I believe in 2021. No.
No, 2019.
No. Yeah, 2019. Thank you. 2019 handed that full forensic image, and he says in the piece, they may have lost the physical laptop, but they can't say they lost. They had the image. They had it from me.
I love Kyle's theory on the laptop. Who actually gave John Paul Mac Isaac the laptop. You bring the laptop to the only legally blind repairman in Delaware. Anyways, let's jump into this story from Bloomberg. Goldman Sachs is cutting about 125 managing directors globally. Goldman Sachs has started cutting manager directors across the globe as the firm reduces its headcount amid a deal slump, according to people familiar with the matter. The move are part of a deep cost savings drive at the bank, which has seen at least 3 rounds of job cuts in less than a year. But this economy's booming, folks. Please. Goldman Sachs and other banks that ramped up hiring in 2020 and 2021 amid a surging in M&A and initial public offerings are now grappling with the falling fees as deal making sputters. Deal values have fallen more than 40% this year to $1.2 trillion. And then of note, JP Morgan Chase is terminating 40 investment bankers themselves. How can they still gaslight the people that this economy is so strong? I mean, Joe Biden goes out there, he's like, we're doing great. No, we're not doing great. The job numbers are always up because people are going out there and getting third jobs now. Yeah. Second jobs wasn't enough. Third jobs.
Yeah, and they just redefine metrics and on lots of fronts, but certainly when it comes to the economy, when it comes to jobs reports, when it comes to the producer price index and the consumer price index, they just change the calculations and the metrics to make the story more palatable to the American people and to allow them enough plausible deniability to go out and say, hey, it's all great, right? And you can see this, I begrudgingly follow the White House on Twitter.
Yep.
And I read their press briefing room, at least the headlines. Some of the things I dig into and read the full remarks, but to just understand where their priorities are, I check out the White House briefing room every day, and you can see the gaslight. It's all gaslighting. And it's gaslighting based largely on manipulated metrics. It should be illegal to lie to the American people in such a grandiose fashion, but apparently it's just politics.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, before we take this show home, we do still have a few more stories, but before we take this show home, our last sponsor of the day, have you ever thought about using CBD products? If you have, then you've got to try CBDistillery.com. I've been using their products for all kinds of reasons. How can CBD help you? Do you need better sleep, less stress, a little more calm, pain relief, especially after some physical exercise, better energy, better focus and concentration? CB Distillery has over 2 million satisfied customers. 90% of customers reported that they sleep better with CBD. 81% said CBD helps them with stress, and 80% said CBD helps with aches and pains after physical activity. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep, if you're dealing with too much stress and could use a little calm in your life, if you suffer with pain and discomfort, especially after physical exercise, if you're frustrated with a health concern that's not getting any better, just try CBD from the source that I trust, cbdistillery.com. Let me get you on the right path with a 20% discount. Visit cbdistillery.com and enter promo code John, Jon, for your discount. No prescription required. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code John, Jon. I cannot recommend CB Distillery enough, and CBD in general, but get it from a reputable source, folks. Don't buy it from the gas station or from Walmart. You're getting crap CBD. Get it from somebody that actually takes the time, and that's their craft. That's all they do. And, they put out quality, not crap. So,
yeah, I remember the first time I saw CBD in a gas station. That was quite the experience. You're probably getting mostly filler.
Well, if I think of it this way, if you're a vino like me, if you're a wine head like me, you're not going to buy wine at a gas station. I mean, that's like some low crap right there. And the CBD is the same way. There's certain things you buy at a gas station and there's certain things you don't buy. Gas is the primary one. Other than that, I wouldn't buy much at a gas station.
Red Bull. Red Bull at the gas station.
Road trip snacks. Oh yeah, I told you before the show, I stole my wife's Starry because she stole my Mountain Dew this morning.
Yeah, Starry does not compare. Starry, there's no contest between Starry and Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is far superior.
Yep. I don't drink a lot of soda. We don't drink a lot of soda in this household. So when we do have a soda in the house, it's like crack. We're like Hunter Biden going through the rug, just Parmesan cheese, sniffing it out, like just chug that Mountain Dew. I had a Mountain Dew before I went to bed last night. I woke up or I didn't go to bed till 3 a.m. because of that. But anyways, all right, let's get into the next story here. Donald Trump puts out two truths, and we're going to tie this all together. So Fox News, which is down 37% in the ratings, doesn't cover me getting Man of the Decade award. Excuse me, because of my great trade policies in Michigan or my keynote speech for faith and freedom in DC, and then wants me to show up and get them ratings for their presidential debate where I'm leading the field by 40 points. All they do is promote against all hope Ron DeSanctimonious, and he's dropping like a rock. Sorry, Fox News. Ooh, almost said it right there. Sorry, Fox News. Life doesn't work that way. Fox News just covered from beginning to end the Ron DeSanctimonious, very boring news conference at the border, but didn't cover 1 minute of my two big speeches on Saturday and Sunday night, one for faith and freedom in DC, the other about trade in Michigan. Something's in my throat right there, where I was presented with the Man of the Decade award. The DeSantis speech was just a rehash of all the things I did to have the safest and strongest borders in U.S. history. So Trump's got a really good point here. He also has this poll out here. It says new poll, Trump 69, DeSanctimonious 16. Okay. And then, of course, the interactive poll that shows Trump at 57, DeSantis at 19. I'm only going to say DeSanctimonious when he says it. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, that's your governor.
He is my governor, and I like him as my governor.
Yeah.
I wish he'd come back and govern. Like, come back and do some governor, man. Do some governing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that he would, it's unfortunate because I think we all liked Ron, right? I certainly did. I liked Ron. I did. My parents live in Florida, and so I did have, some criticisms of him during COVID. I was in Florida on March 21st, 2020, when he closed the beaches. For a virus, we're going to close the beaches. We actually got a flat tire that day and sat on the side of the road for 5 hours waiting for anybody to come and help us. It was the inside tire of a dually on the back of an RV. And everything was closed because of the very, very horrible, scary virus. Everything was closed in Florida. So I had some criticisms on his treatment of election integrity. I know several Florida election integrity activists. We've talked to Chris Gleason before. The broader Defend Florida community, they have repeatedly tried, in a lot of great, really great respectful ways, tried to get Ron DeSantis as governor to engage in the election fraud debate and policy decisions in Florida, and have not had any luck there. But my biggest criticism of Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida is that the people are apathetic. For so long over the past few years, we've had, well, we don't have to worry. And I'm in Colorado, right, where everything's communist. So I'm usually pretty alarmist when I'm talking to people from Florida. They think I'm crazy. But we don't have to worry about that because we have Ron, right? We have DeSantis. We're totally fine. My parents have told me this before. Well, we have DeSantis, so we're going to be okay.
I said that in a speech I did in Michigan at a Mike Lindell event. Me and Behizzi both spoke up there, and that's why I said we got DeSantis in Florida. This was in 2021.
Yeah, the apathy, I think, is one of the most dangerous aspects of DeSantis's governorship, is that the people are apathetic because they think they have a Trump-like figure, somebody who's protecting them. And I'm not so sure that he is.
I agree. I posted the other day on Twitter a screenshot of my wife's business that wasn't allowed to open until September, the very end of September in 2020. So that's what, 7 or 8 months. Now, I mean, he got us back open. But the thing is like, he was really no different than any of the other Republican. Right. I'm not talking about your rhinos, like up in the Northeast, there were a few rhinos, a couple in the Midwest, but for the most part, Ron DeSantis was on par with all the other Republican governors across the state in terms of doing this. I mean, you have people like Kristi Noem who never shut down. And that's an unfair comparison because, Noem, I mean, their population is like 1/100th of what Florida is. We got 21 million people, and they're all coming from, from New York and the Northeast and stuff. They come down here. So anyways, snowbirds. Exactly. So let's jump into this story here. Texas college fires biology professor for teaching students that sex is determined by chromosomes. In November, 4 students walked out of Dr. Johnson Varkey's lecture over the standard teaching about X and Y chromosomes, according to First Liberty Institute, a law firm representing the professor.
How dare you?
Right? Oh.
How dare you?
The law firm has now sent a letter to St. Philip's College asking them to immediately reinstate Dr. Varkey to his position and clear his record of any wrongdoing. It says, quote, in his role as an adjunct professor, Dr. Varkey taught human anatomy and physiology to more than 1,500 students since 2003. During Varkey's 20-year employment as a biology professor at St. Philip's College, he consistently received exemplary performance reviews and was never subject to discipline. Throughout that time, he never discussed with any students his personal views, religious or otherwise, or on human gender or sexuality. 2 months after the walkout in January, Dr. Varkey received a notice of discipline and termination of employment and contract letter stating that the school, quote, received numerous complaints, end quote, about his, quote, religious preaching, discriminatory comments, and about homosexuals and transgender individuals, anti-abortion rhetoric, and misogynistic banter. Sounds like a case of microaggression, that little...
Because he taught about the differences between X and Y chromosomes.
You misogynistic transphobe.
Well, and the walkout.
For me.
4 students left. Four students who obviously have issues engaging in a collegiate level discussion of biology and feel the need to sue it because of discussions about chromosomes, are saying that this is anti-trans rhetoric. Teaching the realities of the human anatomy and teaching biology, the science of it, is not hate speech. Yep. It's not anti-trans. It's a fact. But these mentally ill people think that anything that questions their worldview. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a push for, or even legislation mandating that you cannot teach anatomy and biology absent conversation about gender theory. Right? Like, you're going to have to, that's where this sounds like it's going, right? These students were upset because the teacher was teaching anatomy and didn't bring in the social science of gender theory. Well, you shouldn't bring in social sciences into a discussion of actual science. We want to create biologists and other scientists that actually have a firm grasp on the reality, right? But no, not if it hurts people's feelings.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up with this story right here. Bud Light says, hold my beer. We got this again. DC Drano tweets out from Post Millennial. Bud Light does not want video of their sponsorship of a pride parade in Canada going around. And here's the video. You can see it here. Shared quite a bit. Fast forward a little bit here. We'll just scroll through it. Yeah, nothing too bad there. I mean, everybody's clothed. Everybody's appropriate. But then when you see what actually was going on at the rest of the parade, the same exact parade in front of children, again, we're on YouTube. It is censored out, so I can't show it Well, I guess I could show it, but I don't want to show it because
I
it's
don't
not
want to see that.
Yeah, it's naked old men walking around and women, men and women walking around. From
You know,
post
I just want to tell a quick story. I know we're running out of time. I just want to tell a quick story. So my husband and I, on our honeymoon, we ended up at a beach in Martinique. Sorry, and St. Martin on the French side. So it was a nude beach. And my I saw these French women walking around topless. And so I said, hey, babe, check it out. And made him look at like a 90-year-old naked dude's penis.
Oh, yeah, that's when you're like,
That's
hey,
how you
babe,
get back at him.
she's hot. What do you think about that? And he turns around. Oh, you son of a crap. All right, so let's just real quick run through this story. Breaking: Trudeau liberals celebrate Toronto Pride as fetishists expose themselves to children. Like, when did this? Now, this is obviously Canada, so their laws don't apply, but the United States does the same crap. When did this become okay? Like, when did we decide that we're going to make an exemption for public nudity and display laws for LGBTQ parades, which, they don't check people's IDs going into these parades, and you just have these examples of men like, and what is the obsession with like LGBTQ people, and this is not a knock on what's that?
And the dogs, is that where you're gonna go? Is that
Well, the fetish, yeah, but that, I mean, look, that is what it is, but like, that's not a crime. Like, wearing a dog mask is not a crime, but being naked in public and flaunting that is absolutely a crime. And not only is it a crime, it requires you to register as a sex offender. I mean, there's only so many crimes that require you to register as something after you've committed it, which probably alludes to its heinousness. Yeah. And this is one of those crimes, and we allow it to happen. We're like, oh, we're going to waive it off for this. We're going to allow you to walk around with your dick hanging out. Like, what in the hell? Where did we become so jacked up on this? But let me read through this. The parade put on by Pride Toronto included people walking in puppy play and furry costume fetish gear. Several adults exposed themselves to the audience in attendance. Bud Light helped sponsor the event. And I mean, and it's always the old creepy dudes. No offense.
Yeah, in Denver, so Denver's Pride was this weekend as well, and I didn't go, but I didn't go.
Aww.
But I did follow the social post because I wanted to see, what was it. Looked pretty tame by comparison to like Seattle's that was this weekend, which was super gross. But the one thing that I noticed was how much of the furry stuff is just exploding. And there's the pup masks that look like, something out of a Paw Patrol kind of cartoon. But then there's also like the full furry suits where they're basically dressed up like a mascot at a Chuck E. Cheese.
Disney World, yeah.
Right. And that to me, like, oh, it's just adults fetishizing animals. Well, that looks like it's targeted to children to me. And so that was the one thing that I was pretty surprised about. I was surprised that it was way tamer than I thought it was going to be. There was one really fat lady, running a stripper pole experience, and she was pretty naked. That was kind of gross. But aside from that, it was pretty tame, other than the fact that the furry stuff has just exploded.
I don't have much experience with Colorado, but I've been to Denver a few times, and I went to an arts festival down there a few years ago. This was before COVID, so probably like 2018, 2019. Yeah. And I actually had a lot of fun. Like, the people there, like, even though you could tell that they were pretty liberal and stuff, they were very friendly. I mean, it's a really good atmosphere in Colorado. So at least, this hasn't really taken the people, although like I said, I haven't been there in 5 years, other than but
the thing I would say about that is that so Denver, I went to college here. I moved away and came back. I've lived here now for 12 years. And Denver, I worked in Denver. So I took the train into the city and worked in downtown Denver. Beautiful, cultural, incredibly inclusive, great city to visit prior to the summer of 2020. In the summer of 2020, when the George Floyd and BLM riots took hold, the city, because it was also COVID, and the city economy, the people that drive the city economy, the workers were all home. It was like an abandoned battlefield, and it was taken over by communists, and it's never really rebounded back.
Yeah, it's almost like that summer of love was like the dog whistle to all these indoctrinated college youths. Like, like that was the the sequence of words that you had to put together to activate, Bucky in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. That's the series of words you put together and they become activated because everything just flipped. Maybe it was the Hadron Collider that they turned on. Maybe we're in the parallel universe right now where all of a sudden Democrats became like extreme communists and just went absolutely batshit crazy. Maybe that's where we're at right now. I don't know.
I don't think we need a Hadron Collider to make that case, though. They've been on that progression for a long time.
Yeah, but the Hadron Collider.
I love the Hadron Collider theory. I love that we're living in a parallel. The Man in the High Castle, there's two different I love all of it. I'm just saying that you don't need that to show Democrats turning into communists because I think that's just a natural progression.
I gotcha. All right, well, that's going to wrap up today's show. Be sure to tune in today at 5 p.m. Ash and I will be back at it with Why We Vote, and we're going to we might have to do a little improvisation. I think there was we had some issues with our guests, so we'll figure it out. But be sure to tune in today at 5 p.m. Follow us both on Twitter, Ash in America for her, CanCon Actual for me. Oh, one last thing I really would need, if there's anybody out there that's near Laughlin Air Force Base on Friday, there's this big discrepancy. They're supposed to be having a pride parade on Friday at 2 p.m. If there's anybody at Laughlin Air Force Base, please reach out to me either via Twitter. You can DM me on Twitter or email me at cancon@cancon.net. And please put in the title Laughlin Air Force Base or something along those lines. There's supposed to be a pride parade around the base housing there. I'm getting mixed signals from the Air Force. I can't get a straight answer from them. From a tech sergeant said one thing, their staff sergeant has their name on the flyer. It's a big shit show. So if you're anywhere near Laughlin Air Force Base, please reach out to me, cancon@cancon.net, or DM me on Twitter or Truth Social. All right, that's all I got. Ash, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in like 5 hours.
Yep. God bless everyone.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.